Hey everybody, welcome back to Low Friction Friday. And yeah, today should be a whole bunch of fun with, we're going to cover the recent surprising situation of Ceramic Speed doing some friendly fire to torpedo immersive waxing, which is obviously very odd for a company that is heavily invested in and promoting and has done a lot of great work with immersive waxing and waxes. So yeah, we'll be able to run through a whole bunch of stuff just from some sort of testing realities, where things likely went wrong, what I think they should have done in light of the sort of shock surprise that they managed to give themselves. And so there'll be, I guess, some opinion critique as well as some facts on various aspects of the testing in chains as well. So hopefully I'll be able to structure that in a way that all makes sense well without me rambling too much, but should be a bunch of fun. Before we get to all that, just some quick low friction news updates because there's been a bunch in the last week, so let's rip into it. All right, first one I was very pumped to see this morning is that Sram have won the legal battle with the UCI over the upcoming gear limit restrictions, so those trials will not be taking place. Well done, Sram, for taking this up legally, and oh my god, how pumped I get in this day and age when logic and reality get back together and hook up again, because that does not always happen, sadly. But yeah, I mean, this was always going to be an embarrassing disaster for the UCI, and I do not understand how the UCI still lack the ability in their decision-making processes to be able to determine what is going to be a good decision and path to go down versus what is going to be a nonsensical, illogical disaster. And I hope that they actually, this is very wishful thinking. I hope that they can finally take some learnings around their decision-making process from this, and please do better in the future on more fronts, because whatever resources were wasted on this could have been spent on actual meaningful change. How about they have a look at doing that next time around? All right, next news. So yeah, really fun one, this one. So Squirt have launched their immersive wax. This has actually been a long time in development. So some years ago, I can't remember, I think it's about 3 years ago, we had a number of conversations with Squirt because they wanted to set up in-house testing that was exactly the same as the ZFC Test protocol. So they, we helped ensure that basically every single step of the main test and the single application longevity test was in place, and they have been merrily testing very, very hard, genuinely very hard. I know they've burned through multiple test machines, smashing through all the kilometers of testing that they've been doing, I believe not just to develop their immersive wax, but also updates to their wax drip formulas, I think, which we'll find out some more about as well. So yeah, quick nuts and bolts though today. It's interesting, they're focusing on some outright efficiency numbers with their immersive wax. One of the marketing angles they're going for here is that it achieves a higher efficiency more quickly. So as we know, most immersive wax chains, for the first few minutes, they are very high loss. So they're saying here 70 to 74% efficiency. That would not surprise me. They're saying that theirs is basically 94% efficient from the bat and increasing to 96% within 5 minutes, stabilizing at around 97 to 98% after 15 to 20 minutes. For some, I guess, comparative figures, if we recall Silka's numbers they put out showing their sort of hot melt versus endurance chip versus speed chip, basically normal hot melt was about 97.5% efficient. With endurance chip, it's about 97. With speed chip, it was just over 98%. So that's the kind of reference figures there. Where I would, I guess, raise some eyebrows is that, they're saying other waxes are only 94% efficient after 30 minutes and optimum after 90 minutes. Need to know more about how they're testing this and obviously what competitors they've tested, because typically we know for sort of M-speed wax and hot melt, in normal ambient temperatures, we've normally not been concerned that, say, 30 minutes has been the general recommended break-in period to make sure the chain is optimum ready for a race from pedal stroke 1. And they must be doing some other type of testing to get these figures, because my test protocols do not measure outright efficiency. We are using a wear-based correlation for how the lubricant is performing. The next fun little marketing, I guess it's not, I won't call it angle. I don't want to degrade or debase any sort of marketing approach on this front. They are going down the I guess, the biodegradable. So paraffin, which is typically the main base for a lot of the top waxes, whilst they are a blend of waxes and then fancy friction modifiers, food grade paraffin or lab grade paraffin will be, I guess, the main part of that base wax blend. And paraffin is not it's not biodegradable. It's also like food grade, lab grade paraffin. It's not toxic either. So food grade paraffin, you can eat it. That's why it's food grade. So it does sort of loop back a little bit, as always, to the argument of something that can be biodegradable but potentially toxic versus something that is not biodegradable but non-toxic. And, how much does that mean to all of us? I imagine theirs is both biodegradable and non-toxic. However, if something else that isn't biodegradable is also not toxic, if we have tiny molecules of that being shed out there, this is an area that one day we're going to have to do a deep dive in and try to figure out how much of an issue some of this stuff is or isn't. However, what the main thing or the main takeaway for me on this is that they are clearly not using paraffin as the main base wax like most other top wax blends. Otherwise, they would not be able to claim biodegradable. So that is interesting. Okay. Also of interest is they are going down the hexagonal boron nitride particles, which is more commonly, I guess we would know that as, say, ceramic additive. So boron nitride is a ceramic particle additive that is marketed in some other drip lubricant products. And I have seen some other immersive waxes from some sort of more fringe brands that also use boron nitride. They're using 3 different size particles, so this may set them apart from some others. And that is interesting. I won't ramble on it too much today, this is already going to get too long. But there, I guess, have been reasons as to why most other brands have gone with something like tungsten disulfide or graphite or graphene as opposed to boron nitride. Maybe they missed something here that Squirt have discovered. So that will be fun to look at. But I do know that others have looked at this and tested this and ended up not using this. But maybe they didn't try 3 different size hexagon particles, and that's been the difference. We can then see they're referencing they've used sort of, doing in-house, but using the zero friction cycling test protocol. And so, I know that they have genuinely put in a huge amount of testing and, referencing some groovy stuff to back the performance of this product. So it's going to be a really interesting one to get in and test here as well. Overall, we can see that there's been a big focus as well on treatment longevity versus trying to fight for every fraction of a watt or percentage of efficiency. So wax treatments that have a great treatment lifespan is a really hot focus by most manufacturers in this space these days. So that is obviously going to be pleasing to many. We note that, again, whilst the key aspect is for this to be easy to apply and easy to clean, they do state, like pretty much all top immersive waxes, that step 1 is to remove the factory grease off the chain. So every now and then we still get questions about, is that really necessary? Manufacturers want you to use their product with the least amount of barrier to you doing so. And cleaning factory grease off a chain has always been a barrier. It would not be stated if it was not necessary. So yes, it is. Factory grease is basically for packing. Do not put crap over the top of that. By crap, I mean good stuff over the top of that. I note the waxing temperature there. They're recommending 93 to 95. So that's basically the same as what M-Speed Wax recommend. And I am very pleased to see there is no mention of letting the wax cool to lock more in. Awesome. That'll be heaps on this for now. We're obviously going to have a closer look at this once we can get this in for testing. It looks quite a different color, so it's not dark like many of the immersive waxes. This looks initially a little bit like the Dynamic Wonder Wax. But yeah, all up, great stuff. Great to see another top big manufacturer in the space with an immersive wax. That's more people that are going to be on wax path and enjoying lower friction and lower wear for their drivetrain. And it will be interesting if, because they work quite closely with KMC, whether or not we start to see KMC releasing pre-wax chains with Squirt hot melt wax as opposed to the KMC Go Wax, or if this immersive wax is rebranded to some KMC branding that they're sort of licensing this product from Squirt like they have done in the past. All right, last update from ZFC. So I have been way behind on so many things because I've been smashed for the last few months with all sorts of stuff. It's been a heck of a run, but we're getting there now. Andrew's on leave basically from today and next week, so I'll still be a bit dented for project time because I've got to cover the retail side as well. Once Andrew's back, providing other weird stuff doesn't happen, if I can avoid cases of, I don't know, cystic fibrosis between now and Christmas, we'll have a solid push and catch up on a whole bunch of fun project side and testing. We are due for the next time to vote video for the next open test to come in. But just haven't been able to get to that. So look out for that. I might get to that one today, or at worst I'll get that out next week. Get the votes in, and then once Andrew's back and we're resettled, we'll get that next open test up and running. The Silka Hot Melt Endurance Chip Test is currently ongoing. I've struggled to sort of keep that moving as fast as I would like due to everything. I've got just block 6 to go, which is a slog. We're partway through it. Hopefully in the next week-ish, I'll get that one wrapped up and then get ready for the detail review. And all onwards and upwards. So once Andrew's back, we'll try to have a strong push on all fronts between now and the Christmas break. Alrighty, that better do. Let's rip into the, what should be, I hope, a super interesting case or breakdown of the friendly fire incident between Ceramic Speed and Immersive Waxing. A surprise to us all. Alright, so just in case you haven't seen the video collaboration between GCN and Ceramic Speed, I'm 99.9% sure I'll remember to put the link in this video description so you can go and have a look. However, the nuts and bolts are GCN went to Ceramic Speed to their very awesome testing facilities there, ostensibly to basically highlight the difference in efficiency loss between a lovely wax chain and a dirty, well-used, gritty oil chain. And obviously, GCN's genuine intention would have been that, we're going to be able to show how awesome a wax chain is versus, and how bad things can be if you're running a dirty oil chain, and that you really shouldn't do that. And obviously, that is what Ceramic Speed would have wanted as well, being that both GCN, their main sponsor being Silka, selling and promoting immersive wax and wax chains, and Ceramic Speed don't have an oil. They sell immersive wax, wax strip lube, and UFO wax chains. Both parties would have very much wanted there to be a huge difference between the lovely wax chain and the dirty, gritty oil chain. What happened was their testing showed that the lovely wax chain was all of 1 watt faster than the dirty oil chain. And then it was a kind of almost comical situation as they all digested that from that moment. So a really, really not scripted, not great outcome for either party as opposed to what they would have hoped and expected in doing this video. So we have two companies that very much want to show how awesome immersive waxing is, ending up putting out a anti-waxer's dream video. I mean, a 1 watt difference between a lovely wax chain and a dirty oil chain. Typically, we would expect to see more than a watt difference in efficiency between, say, a lovely wax chain and a also lovely oil chain that hasn't been dirty and contaminated. So to only have 1 watt between those two test points, obviously a lot of people would very rightfully be going, why would I bother immersive waxing? Like 1 watt and it's dirty versus clean. Are you kidding me? Anti-waxers will be having the absolute time of their life with a video made by two companies who want the exact opposite of that situation to occur. The other big concerning takeaway that I think a lot of people could have from that video is that I don't even need to maintain my chain. I can just run it with sand and grit and crap. All's good, like 1 watt, who cares? The risk of that is that unfortunately if people go down that path is that, people, cyclists, will have much higher wear for their chain and drivetrain, and depending on what they're running, could be costing them a lot more money. So there was a couple of really negative takeaways that came out from GCN and Ceramic Speed, who went into that wanting to obviously give people the exact opposite takeaway to what they provided. All right, some quick bits before we delve into the nuts and bolts on this. Number one, I got to give a lot of credit to GCN in that, yeah, this was obviously not the hoped for outcome when they rocked up to Ceramic Speed to do this video, and yet they've rolled with it and put out the video regardless. So we can clearly see that in no way was this scripted, because they sure as heck wouldn't script that outcome. So this was done live. They've got a result which was very unexpected, rolled with it, not edited out something that they didn't want to happen, and the video's been put out there. So from an integrity standpoint, awesome work, GCN. On the Ceramic Speed side, so I've been very fortunate that I have been working with or dealing with Michael at Ceramic Speed for many years now. We first bonded in much humour over the shocking results of the Wend wax testing that they did, and continued on from there. And Michael has been behind getting me a lot of the awesome actual data and knowledge I have around, especially say chain efficiencies. So he tests a lot of chain models for me, so we know what's sort of fast and what's not fast, as well as a bunch of other lubricant tests for lubricants that we're sort of testing through the ZFC test here, where we can't get the efficiency result. Michael is an outstanding guy. So yeah, he's brilliant, and Ceramic Speed have obviously done a lot of outstanding work in this space of chain lubrication and R&D and testing. So many good things. Just things went really sort of, not how anyone wanted. So when I get to parts where I am, I guess, critiquing or potentially coming across as critical of what should have been done that wasn't done, that is me being sitting here all nice and comfy in my lovely little workshop working from home. I am not under Michael's workload pressures, and so when I say I would have done this and this over the next sort of day or so, it's easy for me to say, not necessarily easy in their position, and so I can understand why follow-up checks and tests were not done. But I can't shy away from, I guess, critiquing, considering the outcome of this and the potential and likely actual damage that this video has done for immersive waxing and wax chains, that with the extra steps to understand what occurred on their end, and being able to then put more information at the end of that video on, we figured out what went wrong. Have a look at these this retest and why we've done a retest and the results from that, and taking people on the journey from the initial shock result to following through to get the understandings and retests, I think would have been an excellent journey and education for everybody. And so I can't not be critical of that not being done. But again, that's me sitting here in my comfy workshop. I'm not under Michael's huge workload at Ceramic Speed. So it's both. I think it should have been done. I have to critique it, but also I'm sorry, Michael, I don't want this to come across as harsh. I know you're always super under the pump and you do a great job. But yeah, it is a shame that some other checks and follow-ups were not done post this situation occurring, and that it's just been rolled with as it is. All right, those initial caveats, let's get into it. All right, let's get into the nuts and bolts of how did we only get a 1 watt difference between a lovely wax chain and a dirty oil chain. I'll go through the likely biggest factors first. Everything I'm about to run through is absolutely factually correct. It will, I think, make a lot of sense to anyone of a just general sort of understanding in the space or can follow along. If you're an anti-waxer, you will not accept anything I'm about to present to you because it will go against, obviously, your gold mine that you now have from a wax company. So there will be that for some, but let's go through. All right, probably the biggest factor behind this will be the chain break-in. And this is especially couldn't be any more relevant than for any other chain brand than a SRAM hard chrome chain. So SRAM Force and Red level chains have their hard chrome treatment, which is by far the industry leading, wear life king. And SRAM chains they are tight to start with, and they take a long time to break in because of their extreme wear life durability that they have. So they are very slow initially, and they take a lot of work to get them fast or faster. So the chain break-in, so for those of us that I guess sort of really specialize in the race chains, and we have the ability to be quite meticulous, so such as myself, and I know like with M-Speed Wax, where we can do chain break-ins that are model dependent. The time that we need to spend breaking in a Durace 11-speed chain is vastly lower than the break-in that we have to do with a SRAM hard chrome chain. So with the Durace chain, so all race chains initially here, and we're one of the very few, potentially only a couple of places in the world that do a 2-stage break-in and that is chain model dependent. Initially, there's a 15-minute break-in with a factory grease. That is literally just to ensure that as much of the metal particles as possible are absorbed, and the factory grease is oxygenized, which makes it easier to clean. As it is, it's still not really an issue, but it's just easier to clean once it's been oxygenated versus not. But then the ultrasonic cleaning rounds after that initial break-in with the factory grease, we get a perfect clean. The chain is then reinstalled on the machine, and it is re-lubricated with a high-quality oil. And then it's given the second break-in, and again, the length of that second break-in, that's where we're really wanting to break the chain in, get the tolerances just right, surfaces matched, all that sort of stuff. That will vary a lot. So if we're doing a Durace chain, it's like an hour. 11 speed, that is. 12 speed is much longer. And SRAM hard chrome chains, it's like 500k. And it is going to continue to get faster for the cyclists after that. There are just practical limits as to how far we can and how much resources we can spend on race chain prep, because there's only so much you can charge. But that's a lot better and longer than what probably 99% of others in the industry are, the lengths that they're going to. What we'll find, and this has been found by other facilities as well, is that those that have the ability to efficiency test, is that quite often for a long time, when a chain comes back from an athlete at the pro level and they ultrasonic clean it and retreat it and test it, it's faster, and then goes back out, the athlete does some races, comes back in, repeat, it's faster again, and it can keep getting faster and faster for, depending on, again, the chain model, for up to some thousands of kilometers before, depending on the wear rate of that chain, some wear starts to come in where the tolerances are now out in a negative way, and it begins to get slower. So two main points on this. Number one is that quite likely that chain, they were using Silka Synergetic, which is an extremely high performing oil, because the Silka riders are sponsored, the GCN riders are sponsored by Silka. So even though it's been through a lot of harsh stuff, Silka Synergetic is one of the absolute best ever tested in terms of oils and off-road conditions. It suffered, I guess, the least wear degradation out in those harsh conditions versus waxes of really any wet lube. The only ones in the vicinity of Synergetic were Synerg E and Rex Black Diamond. And we know that, so I've had some initial responses back from Ceramic Speed. Not all of the questions answered yet, but in terms of the chain break-in for the wax chain, that had 10 minutes of break-in time on their machine before the factory grease was then ultrasonic cleaned off and the chain was waxed. So the wax chain was going to definitely be very tight. It will not be its fastest at all. I would say that with a full break-in and use, that chain is going to get quite significantly faster over the next sort of 1,000 to 2,000 kilometers. The oil chain, likely on Synergetic, it's quite possible that chain is actually really in a pretty optimal spot in terms of where it's in for its break-in, and tolerances and fit. So we are quite likely comparing a tight new chain versus finally now a SRAM hard chrome chain in its optimal zone, its tolerances and speed. All right, based on that, which is, actual known knowledge around chains and break-in for, race chains, and most especially for SRAM hard chrome chains. What I believe could have and really should have been done, and again, this is me speaking from my comfy workshop here. Number one, clean the wax off the new chain. Put a quality oil on, break it in for at least 500 kilometers on their endurance machine, clean that off, re-wax it. I'm not even sure, so still need to follow up on, was it UFO wax or their endurance wax, because that could also make a reasonable difference in terms of what's the best efficiency outcome from a wax chain. We don't have numbers yet from Ceramic Speed at all on what their losses are for their endurance wax, so that's a bit unknown. But getting a retest of that chain after it was broken in would have been, like, properly broken in, would be quite interesting. And also what they could have done is cleaned up the dirty chain, wax that one, and get a test for that chain, which we know is going to be really well broken in, see what the result comes out for that on wax. And that would have given some, I guess, a couple of excellent fun retests to have in the video, as well as some new data, which I think would likely go a long way to solving this only 1 watt gap from the test that they put out. So it's, again, easy for me to say, hey, why didn't you do that? There's obviously a reasonable amount of time, resources involved in doing that, so it's not a nothing. But considering the impact of putting out what was released, if I was Ceramic Speed, that is what I would have absolutely lobbied for with both Ceramic Speed Management and GCN, to say, hey, let's cover these bases first. Let's make sure we really understand what's going on here a bit better. From that known aspect of tight new chains versus well broken in chains. Let's cover that base and see what results we get after we've done those steps and retested. And that would have been a fun journey, I think, to go on the video as well. How much difference does it make? Again, depending on the chain model, it can be a lot. I wish I could share with you some of the actual hard data from the testing on this. Unfortunately, it has not been mine that I've officially received to share, and the sources have been sort of varied and sporadic over a period of about a decade. But for instance, we know that, like with, say, a Durace 11-speed chain, we put a lot of labor time in to extract maybe about an extra half a watt of speed from that chain. SRAM hard chrome chain, it's a lot more, and it can, really easily, especially over longer time, as it's done into the thousands of kilometers, be up to around a couple of watts. And strangely enough, even this was something that even Muckhoff helped shore up the case for when I had a call with them some years ago, as we were trying to get to the bottom of some of our differences of opinions on things. Where they were sort of, I guess, touting how awesome Ludicrous AF was that it's like, hey, look, and again, this was their stuff and not sent to me to be able to keep, but it's like, hey, look, here's what happens when we have a chain with Ludicrous AF. Here's its efficiency loss result. We send it out with an athlete. They do some races. It comes back. We ultrasonic clean it. We retreat it, and look, it's faster. And we do that again. We get it back, and it's faster. And then it's faster, and it's faster, and it just keeps getting faster and faster until some couple of thousand Ks down the road, when wear will start to bring it back the other way. But suffice to say, the tighter the chain and the harder wearing that chain is, the longer it takes to get to its optimal place. Probably the best comparison of sort of hard data, so it's not a direct comparison of his was a chain new and here it was 2,000 Ks down the track. The reason we don't have this data is that it's not nice and neat. It's because there's so many factors that affect where a chain is at X kilometers down the track, depending on the athlete, the conditions, the events, and how many kilometers it's done when it's come back in for testing. So it's been too messy for, I guess, public sharing and release. But what we have is, say, a example between a fast chain, so chains that are not all super duper tight. So like the YBN Mark 12 on their previous FTT test machine that they used to do for efficiency testing, that is like a 3.1 watt loss chain. The SRAM Force and Red hard chrome chains were averaging 5 to 5.5 watts. So there's like a 2.5 watt gap between fast chain, slow chain. And the slow chain can be made a lot faster over time just with SRAM. It takes a long time. So that's the biggest factor likely involved, and hope that all made sense without being too rambly. All right, this next part's a little bit of fun. How dirty was it? So there is potentially a bit of a differing opinion between GCN and Ceramic Speed on this one, in post situation. Obviously, in the video, GCN really talked up that this chain was pretty well hammered and pretty dirty, with sand on through the chain and on the outside, and even a bit of rusting. Which rust is just a visual thing; it doesn't affect performance because it's just some spot rusting on the outside, so nothing to do with what's running inside. Comments back from Ceramic Speed. Let me just duck to the email. All right, so we can see here the chain was not really dirty to start with. It was mainly on the outside and well lubricated. At the end of the video, we did apply sand and water on that same chain, and it shot up to 12 watts, I believe, which is much more in line with a truly dirty and gunky chain. So that's a fairly critical one. So yeah, when it was actually hit with some sand and water, it's gone up another basically 4 watts, which is fairly significant and more in line with what they would expect. To be only at 8 watts on that machine. So it's hard to relate their new machine versus all the efficiency testing that they did previously on the FTT machine. But we can have a bit of a crack because we've used the FTT machine with them for a long time, and we know what results we typically get. So typically your fastest wax chains on that machine will come out at about 3 watts loss, and there's nothing in between messing things up on an FTT machine. What we're seeing now with their sort of wax chains is, depending on the chain model, it's going to be sort of somewhere around that potentially 6 to 7 watt mark. So there's a 3 to 4 watt increase on the new machine because it's counting all the other losses of the drivetrain in the system as well, which the FTT machine didn't. So an 8 watt loss chain, which was the original dirty chain test that they did there, we can call that, say, probably about a 5 watt loss if that was tested on the old machine, which is a pretty good result. A lot of lubricants new on a proper test don't do as well as 5 watts. So that sort of again speaks to that this is likely a well lubricated Silca Synergetic chain, which is a very high performance oil that is tested very well. And when they have added some actual sand and water, it shot up basically another 4 watts. So that would be like, say, a 9 watt loss chain if it was tested on their old FTT machine versus the best outcome of, say, around a 3 watt loss for a top wax chain. I've actually got some groovy data from other testing of dirty chains at the end of the ZFC main test protocol. So let's have a bit of a look at that because they are much more in line with what we saw there with the Ceramic Speed test when they added some sand and water. And it does, I think, help cast some question marks around how dirty was this chain versus actually nicely lubricated. There was some sand being crunched and crushed on the outside, but that went away pretty quickly. Again, sand on the outside is not going to have too much of an impact at all, and definitely not for very long, versus if you've got a whole bunch of crap running on the inside of the chain. This testing data, I've been saving this for the right time. It was going to be on the right sort of anti-wax and nut job video proposing how awesome oil is. I was going to use it to really tear that down. Never got around to doing that properly. So anyway, we get to use it in a friendly fire incident instead for immersive waxing. This is a graph of the test data from some of the original Friction Facts days where we have some excellent data for a whole bunch of products and the efficiency losses from that FTT test machine. And then on an exact same build FTT test machine that Flare built up with basically consulting and help from Jason Smith, who built the original Friction Facts machine. So same components, torque sensors, motors, everything. They did some testing for me on their FTT machine on some of the chains post the ZFC main test. So how cool is that? And we have taken that data, and for lubricants where we can match it up to an FTT test, either by Friction Facts or Ceramic Speed, for that product new versus what they were at the end of the ZFC main test, and where at the end of the ZFC main test we can see the difference. And so, for instance, Squirt. Initially, that tests at 4.51 watt loss. At the end of the ZFC test protocol, so it reached 0.78 towards the end of block 5. So it's gone through the dry contamination block 2, the wet contamination block 4. It's done 4,700 kilometers, 0.78 wear rate, and now it tested at 9.39 watts loss, so a 4.59 watt increase. Markov hydrodynamic, that tested at 6.25 watts new after just 2,000 kilometers. So just at the end of block 2, the dry contamination block, it has gone up to 10.41 watts loss. That is 4.16 watt loss increase in just 2,000 Ks of testing. Wind wax, we won't even bother with that, but that practically broke the machine. Rock and roll gold, 5 watts to start with, after 2,000 kilometers up to 12.27. So loss increase of 7.27 watts. Nix friction only went up by 2.15 after 6,400 K. Pretty cool. So that is a high quality oil, and so that goes to show what a high quality oil, how it can perform. And so that also, I think, adds a lot of weight to, I guess, a lesser increase in loss for a top oil like Synergetic in that test as well. And so other fun ones there. So White Lightning Epic Ride, it's over 8 watts new. After 2,340 Ks, it was 19.05 watts loss. So just that's literally basically at the end of block 2, the dry contamination block. So you can get some pretty astounding increases. Smooth, at the time that was not tested, that has been tested since. I forget the exact figure, I've got to hunt that down. Smooth is actually very impressively fast. So it would be a reasonable increase, probably around about the 6 watt range, but this 10.11 watts is at the end of the full main test at 6,000 K, so it's been hammered with a whole lot of stuff. All right. So how cool is that? I wish I was not already going way long and I could spend more time showing that, because that's some groovy, never before seen test data. But the main takeaway is that there is a huge difference between the top performing oils after they've seen some crap versus the not so great performing oils. And if we have a look at even, say, the ZFC main test data in just at the end of, say, block 2, which is the dry contamination test block. All right, so having a quick look at, so the top oils or wet lubes in the dry contamination block 2, where we're hitting the chain with 7 times it's hit with 5 grams of sand, basically across this 1,000 kilometer test block in between the rear lube intervals. Silk Synergy with the lowest wear increase in that test block at only 0.08 of a chain's wear allowance. Rex Black Diamond 0.11, Revo Lubes 0.18, and Silk Synergetic 0.19. So there's a pretty big difference in that versus, say, if we duck down to some of the worst, we have, say, Wolftooth WT1 0.53, Ludicrous AF 0.78, Finish Line Wet 0.91. So that's basically eating through the entire chain in the 1,000 kilometers. You're going to get a much bigger increase in your losses if you are abrading through all of the hardened steel, all of your chain's wear allowance in just 1,000 kilometers, as opposed to if you're only wearing through a small fraction of that. All right, so still to be confirmed, but extremely hot odds on that, being that these are GCN riders, that they would be using either Silk Synergetic or Synergy, and that those products combined with some harsh conditions and a Sram hard chrome chain, it's probably just done a great job of breaking the chain in. As opposed to, as we see, they are impressive indeed, even in harsh conditions, in terms of having, wear increases and efficiency loss increases, because they are top quality oil products. The same will not be the case. So one of my biggest fears or that people had as a takeaway from that video was, I don't even need to bother maintaining my oil or wet lube chain. Depending on your lube choice, if that's the path you take, because that was your key takeaway from that video, please reverse that takeaway, because if you are on any of quite a number of very popular big name brand oils and wet lubes, if you don't maintain them, you just very quickly do have a chain and drivetrain eating substance masquerading as your chain lubricant, and it's going to cost you a lot of friction wear and money. So just please reverse that takeaway if you do that, and also maybe get away from those and use any of the top 5 wet lubricants or oils tested, as opposed to anything near the bottom half of the table, which sadly are some of the most common and most popular. Yeah, I hope that the loss increases that I showed from that never seen before data helps bring you back to, yes, I really do need to maintain my chain if I'm running wet lube or oil a lot, as well as the wear rates for a lot of the products on that main data table. You don't want those wear rates. You don't want those watt loss increases. Get on to, if you prefer to run oils and wet lubes versus wax, get onto a good wet lubricant oil and then maintain it, especially if you are off-road, because there's only really one way things go. However, if you want to break your Sram hard chrome chain in as quickly as possible, you know what products to use, and then head out for a gravel ride, and you'll get that chain in a broken in spot much more quickly. All right, also of note, we don't know how much difference this makes yet. This will be a bit of a TBA that'll hopefully be forthcoming. But the GCN chain was the newer E1 force chain, whereas the wax chain was the older D1. How much difference that makes, don't know. Word on the street is that E1s are supposed to be faster. There is definitely room for SRAM to have made a faster chain. I have in the past called for, why don't SRAM make a time trial chain? Because they're normal chains, amazing for wear life, not amazing for speed. And when we see literally 2.5 watt difference between, say, a YBN Mark 12 chain versus a SRAM Axis 12 speed or T-type chain, that is a big difference for just a different chain. Like, people can spend thousands on bearing upgrades and get half that improvement than what you can get from just choosing a fast chain versus a slow chain. For sure, there is improvement for SRAM to increase the speed or decrease the efficiency losses in their typically very tight and not so fast chains. So fingers crossed, when we can get some of the testing for the E1 chains, we'll see that also helps explain some of the gap. I still think there's plenty already just in the break-in, because this is just such a key thing especially with SRAM chains, as well as most likely the quality of the oil that was used. I think that's going to really cover a lot of that gap difference already. But this could also play a part in it. So Michael's been super busy with obviously getting that new fancy machine up and going, and the huge amount of calibration testing and initial testing just to get that machine where and understand that machine how they want it, as well as he's been super busy on a lot of bearing test projects as well. So I don't know when I might be able to say, hey, by chance, can you just do a test for efficiency of the E1 versus the D1, so we can compare that. But fingers crossed we'll get that at some stage, because that will hopefully help a bit as well. All right. So they're really all the main key points to cover as to why there was only a 1 watt gap. But really, and sadly, the horse is well and truly bolted on this. The GCN vid's out. Over 150,000 people have seen that. It has not gone well for wax chains. A lot of the comments are quite brutal, and I can't blame anyone for being so, because what other conclusion would most normal people take away from seeing a 1 watt gap between a dirty oil chain and a new clean wax chain? Like, if I didn't know all of what I know, if I was just a normal cyclist and I watched that video, that is exactly the takeaway I would get, and I would be in the comments going, why would you bother waxing? Like, the heck is everyone on about with that thing? So 150 odd thousand, that'll probably tick up to 200,000 people saw that. Probably maybe, 2,000 people are going to see this. So we're not going to undo very well the damage done. And it's not up to me. Ideally, as I say, and not to be coming across too critical, because I know the pressures that they're under over there. Got to get videos out, and someone's very, very busy at ceramic speed. So I get why work wasn't done after the shock surprise that they managed to get for themselves. But I do believe in my heart of hearts, both parties should have gone, all right, that will not go great for either of us, for what we wanted out of this. And in all honesty, it really isn't representative of what we typically will see with a actual dirty oil chain versus wax. Let's have a pause, let's have a think, let's do some extra work and testing and understand what happened there. And from that extra work, testing and understanding, we've got some other cool tests and data now to be able to show you, take everyone on that journey, which I just ran through there, which they could do probably 40 minutes faster. And that would have been really cool, I think, for everybody in the end, and everyone would have had even more awesome learnings about oil versus wax than they would have without going down that. So I think it would have just been positive, and an awesome outcome, instead of a what I can really only class as a friendly fire disaster, which was unintentional, but I think very damaging nonetheless. Like, if that video hasn't undone about 5+ years worth of work and education from ZFC on why immersive waxing and the top wax strips are awesome, especially compared to oil. And it's come from the least expected front, as opposed to those that are typically rallying against wax and for oil. Anyway, I hope, though, at least from that, hopefully this journey taking you through still gives you some groovy learnings about especially SRAM chains and chain break-in, and the differences between a top performing oil, which again not confirmed yet, but I'm 99.9% certain it will be one of those, versus what we see with the data for really not high performing wet lubricants or oils. And hopefully this has all been fun and educational and useful, and we get something positive out of this friendly fire disaster after all. Right, and just to final wrap on this, keep your ears peeled. I will be surprised if Silka and Josh Portner don't sort of weigh into this as well, and also help re-educate that yes, if it's sort of works for you, that immersive waxing and wax lubricants are definitely going to be your friend, but it's also going to be a good opportunity potentially for them to say, by the way, having said that, how awesome is our synergetic oil if you do go off-road? Yeah, so stay tuned. I would expect they'll want to weigh in on this, because left as it is, the takeaway from that GCN vid is obviously very not positive for products that Silka have also been outstanding in helping educate the cycling world as to why you want to be running those, because they will save you a lot of friction, but most especially a lot of drivetrain wear and cost, as well as remaining clean all the time without having to do any cleaning maintenance. So I'm sure they will probably want to help right the ship, and Josh can do a better job at that than my rambling abilities that I have. Flip side of that, I have absolutely no doubt there will be some other media who will use this as the silver bullet they've been looking for to try to shoot dead wax. And like, here's the concrete proof provided to us all by those behind wax. How more perfect could it be? So yeah, keep an eye out. I am sure we'll see that from some of the more famously incorrect on bicycle chain lubrication media that we've covered in the past. So that will be fun as well. All right, that'll do. Let me wrap it up there. Let me know what you thought. How did I go with trying to correct that disaster? Or do you still think that I'm just all full of crap with everything I've presented to you, and that wax is BS? Let me know, and we can have a fun chat in the comments. All right, have a great weekend, everyone. Look forward to talking to you soon.